So I thought I'd start out with this Hawaiian forgiveness chant. It's kind of a nice heart-opening exercise. And it's called Ho'opono. In Hawaiian, kind of the loose translation of it means to do the right thing. And what the right thing they're talking about is just accepting responsibility for your part in any interaction, anything that takes place in your life or even in the world at large. And Dewitt, who came up with this idea, I don't know if you're familiar with this writing, but it's pretty interesting. He talks about how someone who was working with prisoners but didn't really go to the prison was able to help them get better in their outlook by working on his own outlook. And I think that's kind of where this little exercise came from. So first I'll teach it to you, and then we can do. It's been used as a spoken meditation before, but I put some music to it. Although the keyboard doesn't seem to be on at the moment. It was on earlier. Oh, there we go. Okay. So the Hawaiian words, just the same thing over and over. It's like Ho'opono pono. And then these words that we use, there's a few different ones that are used with it, but I like these English words here. It goes, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So what I want you to do is think about somebody that you'd like to forgive. It might be something simple, like something someone said at work, or it might be something bigger, like something someone has done in the world that isn't really working for us, that doesn't go along with your values or the way that you'd like the world to be. You think about that and then you start singing these words with your eyes closed. feel that sense of freedom, that sense of release. How it's often our own burden when we don't forgive. So it's really just as much for us, or even more, perhaps, than for the other person. They might not even be aware of it. Is this yours?
What? Oh no, that's finished from last week. You see the use.
Okay. Well, I have two in case I run out now up here. Hi. So, I don't know, about 25, 30 years ago or so, I was playing some dinner music in a restaurant, and sitting, playing a nice grand piano and just playing a little background music for people. And it's over on Archer Road in Gainesville, where I live, which is kind of close to the hospital where I now am at, but this was long before that. And a woman came up to me after I finished playing, and she had tears running down her face, and she said, "Oh, thank you so much. That was so meaningful to me. You just have no idea how much it meant to me. My child is getting a bone marrow transplant, and I'm staying here at Ronald McDonald House, and your music just really helped me feel better." Well, at the time I had no idea what a bone marrow transplant was, nor what Ronald McDonald House was. Do you guys know?
Yes.
So yeah, bone marrow transplants, kind of a pretty last resort treatment for pretty serious cancers, and especially leukemia. And Ronald McDonald House is where people stay when their children are getting treatment at the hospital, and they can, that way they can be close by. It's right across the street. But I didn't know any of this at the time. I had no idea really that maybe 8 or 10 years later I'd find myself playing in the hospital across the street and doing a concert on the bone marrow transplant unit, where people are going through a lot of different stages of treatment. And one of the things that we started was when I was sort of dragged into this program of arts and medicine, kicking and screaming, and my friends who were there working told me that they had visual arts in the program, but they didn't really have music. So they wanted me to bring music. So one of the first things that I did was I wrote a grant to get a piano, so that we get a piano in the lobby, and then I started bringing in piano players that I knew from the community to come in and play. And the other thing that we did was we started working on a pediatric oncology unit. A friend of mine asked if I would be willing to come and do a concert there, because she was working there, writing with the cancer kids, the oncology kids. And I said, well, I don't know, I don't know if I can handle that, but I'll give it a try. So I called up my girlfriend Janet, who plays in bluegrass band with me, and got her to bring her banjo. So we went up to this room. It's kind of like a sort of a living room area, maybe half the size of this, and it's a place where people hang out. Their kids are getting treatment, and they come out and they can do activities in this room there before they go back into their private room, their own room. And so families come, their siblings can come visit, they can have activities in this room. And I brought my friend Janet, and we started playing some bluegrass music. And there was a little girl there, and she got up and she said, "Oh, I've got to go get my sister. I've got to go get my sister." And my friend who was working in the unit, who had brought me there, Joan, said, "Okay, I'll go with you down to her room." So they went to her room, and her sister was in the bed, all curled up, like in pain. And her mom was there, and she said, "Oh, I don't think she wants to go anywhere. I don't think she wants to leave the room." But this little girl was very determined, and she said, "She's got to come hear the music. Come on, sissy, come on with us and hear the music." And Joan had brought this little red wagon. They take the kids around in this red wagon a lot. If you're ever over there at the hospital, you'll see kids being carted around in the red wagon, one of those little old radio flyer red wagons. And so her sister got in the wagon, and they're bringing her down the hall. And as they get closer to the room where we were playing, she said she starts sitting up, and she starts looking around. And her sister's going, "You hear the music, sissy? You hear the music? Listen to the banjo." And as they got close, and by the time they got in the room, she was sitting up in that wagon. She was bouncing around. She was laughing. She was looking around. So for me, that was kind of an epiphany about what this work can do for people. And I said, okay, I think maybe I can do this. I'll give it a try. So that's what I've been doing ever since then. Playing in the hospital. I started out, doing a lot of piano music and bringing people in to play piano in the lobby. And then being in the lobby a lot of times is a way that I'll find out about someone who's upstairs in one of the rooms, in one of the units. Someone will come up and start singing with me. I was sitting at the piano one day, and a woman came over and asked me if I'd play some religious music, adult hymn, like In the Garden or something like that. And then she started singing with me, and she had this great voice. And she told me that that she was from Brooklyn and sang with the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir, and that her son, who was a teenager, was there to get a heart transplant, and they're waiting for a heart transplant. So after we did some music downstairs, I went upstairs to visit her son, who just turned out to be one of the most delightful people I've ever met in my life. And he got his heart transplant, and they actually got involved in the program and started coming to the hospital with me and singing and playing, and he would sort of do this comedy routine, and he would go around to pediatrics and do comedy for the kids and tell them, "Hey, I had a heart transplant, it's not so bad." And one thing I remember was, like, when we would play, he'd come and sing with me sometimes in the lobby on the piano, and if I was singing this song here, I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of the people passing by. Friends shaking hands say, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I think to myself, He could do that so well. So as I started going around more on the units in the hospital, and I started studying some different things about music and the effects it could have. And we aren't music therapists, we're artists in residence at the hospital, so we do music, but we don't have a specific goal for the patients. We're not charting, we're not on the care team. Music or art therapists, or any kind of therapist, or recreation therapist, physical therapist, whatever, they've got specific goals that they want the patient to meet. They're looking for these outcomes. And whatever their art form or therapy is, it's being used as a tool to create these outcomes. But what we as artists in residence do is we go into the room and we offer the art to the patient. And so, you know, I might go and I might have a guitar, and I would just say, hello. Do you feel like hearing any music today? Well, what kind of music do you like? You just play? Just play? Just play anything. See, that makes it a little harder. I have to make a choice. But do you like old folk music or old jazz or old Hotel California? You know, I have to say that that's another good one for the hospital, because they often say you can check, the end goes, you can check out, but you can never leave. But this is a good example. Like somebody asks for a song, and I might be thinking, oh, how about another Eagles song? Been running down the road trying to loosen my load. I got 7 women on my mind. 4 they wanna own me, 2 they wanna stone me. 1 says she's a friend of mine. Take it easy, take it easy. Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy, etc. But, you know, that kind of thing. Somebody might ask for Puff the Magic Dragon, and they're thinking it's a nice, sweet children's song and everything, but you know, the second verse of the song goes, the dragon lives forever, but not so little boys. It's really about growing up. But, you know, when you're singing that in a hospital, in a pediatric, it has a whole different meaning. So I'm very aware of lyrics because I'm a singer, you know, so I think about these things a lot. And if someone asks for a specific song, we might try to deter a little and say, well, how about this one, you know? Or if you like, or if we don't know it, might say, I don't really know that one, but how about you might like this one? It's kind of similar, or it's got a similar message, or it's by the same artist, or that kind of thing. And pretty much I would say 90% of the time people are just really glad to have us there doing music and having an interaction of that kind. And one of the first things, you know, is that when we go to the room and say, hey, do you want to hear some music? They don't have to say yes. They can say, no thanks, not feeling up to it. No, maybe come back later. Or, no, I don't want to. You know, because there's not many people who go into their room and ask if they, you know, would you like to take your medicine? No, they don't have a choice about that. Would you like me to give you this injection? No, they don't have a choice about that. So we're one of the only people they can say no to. So we are taught to take that in stride. So we, you know, going around doing this, we get a lot of favorite songs. People have a lot of favorite songs that they like, and we kind of they can be kind of our go-to songs, you know. We have a lot of guitar players, songwriter, guitar players. So there's, you know, people do a lot of Van Morrison and Jim Croce or Crosby, Stills and Nash, or various things, even old folk music like Peter, Paul, and Mary, or something like that. But one of the most popular songs in the hospital, for some reason, is this one, Almost Heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, rolling like a breeze. Everybody, country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home, country roads. You don't have to be from West Virginia to love that song, apparently. But that is a way that I kind of get into what the patients like. A lot of times I'll ask where they're from, and that'll give me a clue. You know, if there's a lot of native Floridians, there aren't a lot of native Floridians, so how many here are native Floridians? Oh, more than usual in a crowd this size. So sometimes I'll do a song about Florida. I have a bluegrassy one that I wrote. It goes, my heart belongs to Florida, her oceans, her rivers, and her springs. In the winter and the fall, you can hear the sandhills call. We're hearing them these days. And see the great blue heron on the wing. Well, I love going places with unfamiliar faces, love seeing things I've never seen before. Like traveling blue line highways, Northland and Hawaii, but I love my Florida home even more. My heart belongs to Florida, her oceans, her rivers, and her springs. In the winter and the fall, you can hear the sandhills call and see the great blue heron on the wing, etc. That's one that I do with my friend Janet. We have a bluegrass band called Patchwork, and she plays the banjos. That's a good banjo song. But anyway, that's one way to kind of figure out what the patient might like. And interestingly, one of the most requested songs in the hospital is a religious song. You might be able to guess what it is. Correct. So we get requested to do Amazing Grace a lot. But we don't just immediately walk into someone's room and do it without asking what they like or finding out more about them, because they might not be religious in that way. Or they might be Jewish, or they might be atheist, or they might be Muslim. They might have a whole different, set of musical favorites. But one of the interesting things about Amazing Grace is that the melody of the song only has 5 notes in it. So this is tuned to a pentatonic or 5-note scale, which means that after the 5 notes go by, it just starts over again. So it's like so instead of singing like do re mi fa sol la ti do, go do re mi, skip the fa, do re mi, so do, skip the T, back to the do again, do re mi, so do. So it's a very harmonious sound with just these 5 notes together. So if you want to sing this one with me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that sang a song like thee. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. So the other thing that's kind of interesting about this pentatonic scale is that if you close your eyes and just listen to it, you might get a visual image of some kind, or it might make you think of something, a place, or a song, or something. So let's try that. I'll just play a little bit of music on this, and you guys close your eyes and just kind of experience it, and then we'll see what happens. So, did anybody have any kind of effect from that? This physiological effect, or something in your pictures in your mind, or any kind of thing that the sounds reminded you of?
When you first started and you started slowly, like doo 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 doo, all of a sudden I was like skipping with you.
Oh yeah, those are flowers. Nice. Anybody else?
It sounded very Japanese to me, and I got an image of like patches of snow melting on the ground and cherry blossoms blooming on a tree.
Oh,
It was very pretty.
nice. It is a Japanese scale. The pentatonic is an Asian, used often in Asia. The 5-note scale.
Definitely had that feel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some people think of water. Kind of sounds like waterfalls or water running in a stream or something like that. So at the hospital, when I started, I could do this. We can't really do this anymore because there's a lot of it's a lot more stricter in terms of regulations about health and safety and infectious diseases. So I can't really hand the instruments to people anymore. But I used to do that all the time. I would hand the instruments to someone, and I'd say, "You want to play?" Oh, you good. It's tuned in such a way that anything sounds pretty nice on it. So people say, oh, I've always wanted to play the harp. And I'm like, well, you can. And they're like, no. And I'm like, yes. So one time I was called into a patient's room, and there was a mom in there, and her little boy was curled up on the bed in kind of a fetal position, and she said, oh, I've got to get him some more pain medicine. Would you stay here while I go get him some pain medicine? And I said, sure, okay. So I just flew over to the bed, and the little boy was sitting there, and I said, I held the heart about 10, and he kind of reached up with one hand and just strummed it. And he kind of like, and he kind of did it again. And then he started sitting up, and then in a couple of minutes he was just sitting there strumming the harp over and over and sitting up in the bed, and he wasn't curled up anymore. So I don't think he needed that pain medication. So that's what, even though we're not music therapists, our music can have a therapeutic effect. And it's powerful. It's a powerful tool. It so often brings back memories. And that's why it's a really valuable thing to use with people with memory disorders and dementia and that kind of thing. Have you seen those pictures where they show the brain activity when different kinds of stimulation are taking place? And there's one that's kind of famous about meditation. It has to do with that. The people who came up with that Ho'oponopono, they were doing it with prisoners. They were doing this meditation, and they saw that the area of their brain that generally was concerned with violent activity became calmed down by this meditation. It shifted into a different part of the brain that was calmer. And that's kind of what I think music does when some parts of the brain are sort of dysfunctional. Sometimes it kind of bypasses those parts because there's so many other parts that music affects. If you see music, picture of music affecting the brain is like popcorn. All these different areas are lighting up because the music has rhythm and melody and harmony and volume and memory and words or not. It's got all kinds of things that can go off, that can be triggered in your brain from music. So Oliver Sacks, a famous music neurologist and musician, said that music can create a pathway back to language. Even though language and music are in different parts of the brain, a bridge can be created. And we see this a lot in our work out at rehab with people who had a stroke or an injury, brain injury, that music can help them start back to reconnecting with language. So, in people with dementia and memory disorders, how many of you have seen people who were non-verbal or seem to be unable to speak, and yet they can sing all the words to their favorite song? So that's why, because it's a different part of the brain. And that's a really powerful tool to be able to remind people who they are if they don't necessarily remember. So there's a video about that went viral that I was going to try to show you all today, if we can get it up on the machine. This was on the computer, and it was online, and it went viral, and it was just a short clip of this one patient in a facility that wound up kicking off this whole movement of bringing music into these facilities in this specific way by an organization called Music and Memory. And this is the story of Henry. Have we got it there? Here we go. Turn up a little.
I have one resident that barely opened her eyes. She didn't respond. As much as I tried, I knew her for 2 years. No matter what I tried, massage wouldn't work, nothing worked. But when we got introduced to the iPods and the family told me the things that she liked, it was amazing once we put the iPod on her. She started shaking her feet. She started moving her head. Her son was just amazed. Okay, can we stop? Because now I'm getting all I'm seeing her all over again.
Hi, Papa. Hi, Papa.
Huh?
How you doing?
I'm all right. Fine. Great.
Who am I?
I don't know. Wait a minute. I don't know.
Okay, it's Charity.
How long has he been in the nursing home? Approximately 10 years. He was having seizures, and my mother couldn't handle him at all. Of course, it affected me greatly because he was always, fun-loving, singing. Every occasion he would come out with a song, no matter where he was. I remember as a child, he used to walk us down the street, me and my brother, and he would stop and do Singing in the Rain. He would have us jumping and swinging around poles. He was, he was good. He was always into music, always loved singing, dancing.
His name is Henry Drea. And I'm looking more or less for religious music for him. Because he enjoys music and he always quotes the Bible. So I'd rather have that for him.
We first see Henry inert, maybe depressed, unresponsive, and almost unalive.
Henry,
Yeah.
Henry,
Yes.
I found your music. You want your music now? Let's try your music, okay? And then you tell me if it's too loud or not.
Then he is given an iPod containing his favorite music. And immediately he lights up. His face assumes expression. His eyes open wide. He starts to sing, to rock, and to move his arms, and he's being animated by the music.
And he used to always sit on the unit with his head like this. He didn't really talk to much people. And then when I introduced the music to him, this is his reaction ever since.
The philosopher Kant once called music the quickening art, and Henry is being quickened, he's being brought to life. Yeah.
I'm going to take the music for 1 second, okay? Just to ask you a few questions. Okay? I'm going to give it back to you. Okay.
The effect of this doesn't stop, because when the
That's all
vocals are taken off, Henry, normally mute and virtually unable to answer the simplest yes or no questions, is quite voluble.
Henry,
Yeah.
do you like the iPod? Do you like the music you're hearing?
Yeah.
Tell me about your music.
Well, I don't have none, my man.
Do you like music?
Yeah, I'm crazy about music. You play beautiful music, beautiful sound.
Did you play music when you were? Did you like music when you were young?
Yes, I went to big dances and things.
What was your favorite music when you were young?
Well, I guess, Cab Calloway was my #1 band guy I like.
What was your favorite Cab Calloway song?
Oh, I'll be home there for Christmas. You can come plan on me with plenty of snow, mistletoe, present, wrapped around your tree. Ow! Remembered who he is, and he's reacquired his identity for a while through the power of music.
What does music do to you?
Give me the feeling of love. No man. Because right now the world needs to come into music, singing. You got beautiful music in. Beautiful, oh lovely. And I feel the band of love, dream.
Lord came to me, made me holy. I'm a holy man. So he gave me this sound. So they say, I meet you. And say, Rosalie, won't you love me? Rosalie, won't you love me?
Now with new technology, you can have all the music which is significant for you in something as big as a matchbox or whatever. And I think this may be very, very important in helping to animate, organize, and bring a sense of identity back to people who are out of it. Otherwise, music will bring them back into it, into their own personhood, their own memories, their own autobiographies.
So this organization, Music in Memory, this video clip went viral, and a lot of young people saw it online, and it was like, it reminded them of their grandparents, and they got pretty excited, and a whole movement kind of started around this clip. And it brought the young and the older folks together in this view of what music could do. And they talk about, bringing this special recorded thing into this setting. And to me, it's just a reminder that we all should be doing this. We should be making our own playlist. Like that was Henry's playlist. What would your playlist include? Think about it and write it down, or let someone in your family know that that's what you would like to be hearing if you're at the point where you can't tell anyone anymore what you want to hear. Would you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. You mentioned music therapy versus what you do. Can you tell us the difference between what it is you do and what they do?
Well, I did. The music therapists have a goal, a set of goals. They're part of the care team. They're part of the medical care team. They chart their visits, and they're looking for specific outcomes. We take the music in as an offering, and like I said, the patient can say no. They don't want to have music at that time. It's not part of their treatment. It's just an offering. But that's not to say that what we do won't necessarily have a therapeutic effect.
Right, okay.
It's really just a question of vocabulary and roles and responsibilities and kind of, categorizing those things. Music therapists, they go through a degree program, they have to pay to be licensed, they have to do a lot. And their use of music or the other art form is more like a tool to create a specific outcome. Whereas we're more like, we're already just doing our art in the community. We're professional musicians and artists who bring our art into the setting, and it's not for everyone, because you're kind of a combination of those two things when you do this kind of work. But think about what might be on your playlist, what you'd like to hear, like in my parents' generation and Henry's generation, and also the music that I love. My dad was a jazz musician, so I have a special love for this kind of jazz. So I'll just leave you with this one song. It's one of my favorites, a song by the Gershwins. George Gershwin wrote the music, and Ira wrote the words. But George died in his 30s of a brain tumor. And so this particular song, which is called Love Is Here to Stay, is the last song that Ira was able to write with George. And I think that he wrote it kind of for him. Even though it's a very popular, beloved romantic song, to me it also speaks about universal love. It's very clear our love is here to stay. Not for a year, but forever and a day. The radio and the telephone and the movies that we know may just be passing fancies, and the time may go. But oh my dear, our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way. In time the Rockies may crumble, Gibraltar may tumble, but they're only made of